Welcome to America Advances.
It's time to rebalance funding toward the Air Force and Space Force. It is time to rebalance the Department of Defense resources so that our men and women in uniform can fight, if necessary, and win in an increasingly dangerous world. The United States is facing extreme challenges from China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and an array of non-state actors presenting threats like never before. This situation demands a new security environment and a revised investment strategy. 2 decades of ground-centric operations led to a dramatic surge in Army spending, neglecting sufficient investment in air and space power. It is time for a reset. Combatant commanders today require more air and space power, and budgets need to reflect this need. The Air Force is essential to the U.S. way of war, fulfilling core roles like air superiority, long-range strike, air mobility, and 2 legs of the nuclear triad. Without air power, conflicts devolve into long, costly wars of attrition, as seen in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Similarly, space power underpins all military actions. The Space Force is responsible for achieving space superiority to ensure the delivery of core missions like communications, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, missile warning, positioning, navigation, and timing, and weather monitoring. These functions are crucial for U.S. power projection and performance in major conflicts. Tanks and large infantry formations are less relevant in the Pacific region. While a sufficient number of these capabilities is needed for other regions, there is room for trade-offs. In the 20 years following 9/11, the Army received approximately $1.3 trillion more than the Air Force, including future Space Force functions. Afghanistan and Iraq were land-centric operations, and the budgets reflected this. However, this funding shift came at a cost. An Air Force aircraft inventory that is the oldest and smallest in service history, and a Space Force dramatically undersized given the scale of its mission responsibilities. Such risks may have been justified when American service members were fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq, but those wars are over. Current challenges demand an ever-increasing amount of air power and space power. Joint power projection will not happen without renewed investment in these 2 domains. It is time to rebalance funding toward the Air Force and Space Force. This situation is generally not well understood, as many assume the service departments each receive an equal share of the military budget. However, the reality is quite different. The Department of the Air Force's budget, which includes both the Space Force and Air Force, contains a substantial amount of money that passes through the department to fund efforts elsewhere in the security enterprise. This pass-through amounts to over $40 billion per year. If this pass-through were reallocated to its proper category, defense-wide spending, the Air Force would receive 20% of the budget and the Space Force 3.6%. This combined total is surpassed by the 26% allocated to the category classified as other DoD functions. While these percentages are starting to shift in favor of the Department of the Air Force in the proposed fiscal 2025 budget, it may be too little, too late. A major rebalance is necessary to build the required air power and space power capabilities and capacity that the global threat environment demands. Simply adding more money to the overall defense budget, one potential solution, is unlikely due to the spending caps legislated by Congress as part of the 2023 Fiscal Responsibility Act. Therefore, the situation demands internal reallocations within the DoD top-line budget. This, however, will create challenges. Those losing a portion of the defense budget will strongly protest, and their advocates in Congress will not allow this without a fight. However, higher-order issues are at stake, namely winning or losing America's next war. Winning is not possible without sufficient air power and space power. Interestingly, in the years following Desert Storm, China recognized the need to make similar budgetary reallocations between its domains. The People's Liberation Army reduced its land force to strengthen its naval, air, and space forces. Now it is time for the U.S. to follow a similar path, Just as the U.S. surged funding to the Army when it was the predominant means of fighting, now it is time for another rebalance to build the Air Force and Space Force we need. Our ability to succeed in a joint fight against our adversaries now depends on the capabilities and capacity of the Department of the Air Force.
That's it for today's video, soldiers. I remind you that you can subscribe to stay updated with the latest military news.